What if everyday products could make a lasting impact on the planet? That's the question I asked myself 2 years ago when I started my 3D printing business that does cool, custom 3D printed plant pots. My name is Chris. I'm the founder of HAPPYPOT. We're on a mission to make the world a happier place, one pot at a time. Now, admittedly, that's a very ambitious goal, but it's one that we apply across every facet of our tiny little startup. Over the past 2 years, we've planted thousands of trees worldwide while creating cool, custom plant pots as gifts for companies in Malta and beyond. Although we haven't actually gotten the chance to plant trees ourselves with our own hands, until we got a phone call from Treeapp asking if we'd like to join them with a tree planting activity in Northampton in the UK. This is that story. The day before the tree planting activity, we got to actually meet Jules and Godefroy, the founders of Treeapp, to ask them how and why they started the company, where they're at now, where they're going, and how we can probably bring that global impact to our tiny island of Malta. Check it out.
We were both working in the sort of startup venture space, and we came together and we knew we wanted to build a company in this space. And what we identified is a critical issue with impact is that everyone or most people are aware that, you know, there's climate change and that we need to plant more trees and that, you know, we need to stop using that much plastic, over-consuming, etc. But it's very hard to actually do anything about it. People either don't have the time, the money, or the know-how. And so we brainstormed a lot around what could we do to bring a solution that is free, that only takes a minute, that you can trust, that is on your mobile.
Yeah.
And I'd say the day where we really thought, okay, let's do this, is the day where we thought, okay, why not let people plant trees?
In the end, what we did is combine three parties into one, and that whole equation is what enabled us to plant trees. And these three parties are, on one side, the users that would watch, you know, the ads and that would plant trees via this, and this becoming a daily habit. On the other side, organizations that'll be then advertising themselves. We try as much as possible to push organizations that are doing things differently. For example, that produce locally, that use alternatives to plastic, like we just said. So we're trying to minimize also the impact of the products that are being advertised on the platform. And then the third party is, of course, those who plant the trees, right?
Community.
People all across the world, exactly. They'll look after the planting activities. And the beauty of it is that, you know, from your phone, you could be on your bicycle. I would really recommend. You could be anywhere. As long as you have internet access, you can support these planting activities. Exactly. And then in just a few minutes, some ads being less than a minute as well, you could support a farmer in Peru to plant a fruit tree that he's been looking to plant for, I don't know, many years.
And feed his family.
Exactly. You could support planting mangroves in Indonesia and helping flood devastation that is happening there as well. Or you could have plant trees in the deserts of Ethiopia. And so that's the beauty of it that we're trying to put together.
So we often get questions about the whole tree planting process, right? Because, as you said, the awareness is there, right? People know that we need to plant more trees, they know that we need to use less plastic, yeah. It's the ideal world that we want to live in, but very few people actually enable themselves to do it. So a lot of people are skeptical about whether or not it's real, what the impact actually is, and when they don't see the actual tree itself, they're skeptical as to whether or not it happened and what impact it's actually making. So we get asked, why did you plant trees in Malta? Of all the places that you plant trees, all these 13 countries, 50 plus planting sites, why not plant trees in Malta? The biggest reason is the infrastructure. So realistically, the only way to plant trees hassle-free in Malta is on private land. Now, as you know, Malta is a very small place and private land is limited. And when you do plant trees on private land, you don't just have to worry about planting them, but you also have to worry about the upkeep and the maintenance. And that is where third parties get involved, because you can't just walk into someone's field and water the plants. You know, there's a whole process around it, which tends to be very bureaucratic. So how have you managed or somehow went around the infrastructural challenges that some countries may have, whether it's community-based, whether it's policy-based, to start planting trees in these countries? Does the infrastructure usually support you entering a new planting site and planting trees? Is it something that they reach out to you for? How exactly do you do that? Because I'd be interested in exploring how we can bring this back home.
Yeah, so the first thing to note is that every country and every site are completely different. And that's how you need to start. So if you look at our planting activities, let's say in Guinea, or if you look at planting activities in Indonesia or here in the UK, for example, or in general in Europe, these are completely different. We sometimes work with public entities where they give us access to an area that is protected. Very often it's protected forests or protected natural parks. And with this authorization, we're then able to go there and have access as much as we want to the site to plant and upkeep the trees. When it goes on private land though, you're mentioning a very good point where it can become very challenging. And depending on the intentions that we have with that site, is it more agroforestry? Is it more some dense planting? Is it more some spaced areas? Is it more hedgerows? So depending on the approach that we're going to have to planting activities, we're going to have a different way to do it. And so every time when we approach a planting site, there's always the three parts that we look at, which is one, first ensuring that there is the additional value of planting trees in that location. Once we've done this decision and signed all of the agreements to make sure we can move forward with the planting, then comes the planting activities. And once the planting activities are done, then there's the third part, which is the monitoring. Okay. And the three parts are essential to make sure that we have the right approach towards planting activities. Now, the challenge that you're going to have, especially in areas that are more poor areas, is that there isn't always this vision and this need of planting trees. Unless it's agroforestry, and then you can see, the fruit trees that are then bearing, and then where you can make revenue afterwards. You need to do a lot of convincing. So if you look at Malta, for
policy
example,
level as well, probably.
and for a policy level, and in general from like an upkeep level, why would I do that if it doesn't bring me money?
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless there is revenue that could be made from like government incentives, in a lot of areas, let's say maybe more like Southern Europe, and I can know because I'm half Greek actually.
Okay.
And when I spoke with farmers in Greece about planting activities, they don't understand the need for this unless it's agroforestry.
Right.
Well, if you speak about this with farmers more in Northern Europe, for example, they're going to much more see this needs because they know about the climate change, they know about issues, and they know how this can bring back local species to the areas.
Yes.
And actually help their sometimes planting, grow better afterwards.
Of course.
So there's a lot of convincing that sometimes needs to be done, and especially in a country like Malta, where you don't have as much rain, then not only you need to convince them about the planting, but you need to convince them about the upkeeping and the watering of the trees afterwards, which you might not need to do as much, for example, in the UK where you have more water.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that in different places, the same tree or the same level of impact would be viewed differently, not just at the policy level, but even the people themselves.
Yeah.
So how would it benefit me or my family or my city or my town or my country in general? In Malta, I feel like the populace, the people know about the need to bring back trees, the need to get more of what we've unfortunately torn down over the past few decades. And I have only been alive for a measly 25 years, but my parents and their parents remember a much greener Malta. Unfortunately, whether it's through corporate greed or poor planning, that green Malta still exists, but at a much, much lower level than it used to before. The central region especially is now overpopulated, and it is a common fact that can't really be debated. And we're now looking at, because that's purely what makes sense from a logistical perspective, rather than scaling developments outwards, scaling upwards. So now we're seeing more skyscrapers, more high-rise buildings. We look at countries like Singapore, who have managed to master the art of integrating trees and plants and greenery into high-rise buildings. And I guess some people look at it from an idealistic way, like, oh, that's amazing, I wish we could do that, but realistically we can. So looking at this, seeing at the different infrastructural challenges that companies face, what is your appeal? What would you say to the policymakers of countries such as Malta and beyond to embrace sustainability, not just from a policy perspective, but even from an urban development perspective?
I don't think we pretend to have the exact answer.
Yeah.
We really chose the countries where we're planting to maximize the impact that the trees can have. So, for example, our project in Madagascar, which is one of the first countries where we started planting trees. Madagascar over the last 100 years has been widely deforested. They lost about 50% of their forests. So we obviously really need to put new trees into the ground in these kind of countries. Same with, for example, our projects in Tanzania or in Haiti. There's a very clear reason why we're planting trees there. In Haiti, we're doing a lot of agroforestry, so we're planting fruit trees that can then help the community feed themselves, etc. In Indonesia, we plant trees along the coast to prevent the risks of flooding. So because we never really studied Malta, I wouldn't want to sort of give any recommendations or anything like that without really knowing what we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, trees have so many different benefits. It's not just environmental, which is what a lot of people think. It's also social, it's also economical. There's so many benefits that come from tree planting. But obviously, trees take time to grow, so it's not necessarily the easy win or easy solution.
If you look at the UK as an example, with industrialization, the UK's forestry cover fell to close to 9% in 1910, which was its lowest point. Since then, actually, the forestry cover in the UK has only been increasing. If you look as an average since then as a cover. Now, the UK has an approach where they incentivize landowners to plant trees or to plant hedgerows. And they actually give money to incentivize them for that. So not being aware about what are the policies, because you're talking about policies in Malta, one way to plant, for example, native species of trees could be to have incentivization in saying that every square meter or every 10 square meters that you plant and protect over an agreed amount of years, then you'll get this funding. Now the challenge is what happens when you sell the plot, right? Because then you want to know whether this is going to be staying afterwards or not. And especially if you sell it maybe to your son so that you can find a sneaky way maybe to get rid of these trees. And this is where government efficiency is needed to ensure that you do as much as possible to avoid giving money for free, but that also benefits reforesting, for example, in the country. And so in these ways, it could help a bit if you think about policies on the government level.
Definitely. I think you made some very excellent points, and I would love to kind of mention there is a silver lining. So locally in Malta, and I have to speak about Malta because that's kind of where I'm from, that's all I know realistically, but there has been over the past few years especially a clearer focus on green areas. So the new projects that we've been seeing that have been planned for the past few years are taking into consideration the green areas around them or embedding green areas within them. That being said, there's still a lot of, uncharted kind of urbanization, which doesn't really make sense to most people. Thankfully, there is entities that protest these things, which holds the public planning authority from actually enacting these things sometimes, but it doesn't always work. I do think that we are on track to becoming a better nation when it comes to the planning side of things, especially because of these entities and organizations that are pushing towards the greener Malta, but there's always work that needs to be done. So, because of companies like Treeapp, small companies like ourselves and larger corporations now can make an impact pretty much anywhere in the world. And that's beyond the actual numbers and the quantification of planting trees. It brings awareness. And I think that has been our strongest point so far. We're doing something in Malta that, as far as I know, no other company is doing, which is supporting tree planting as a result of the purchase of something. So when you buy pots or gifts from HAPPYPOT, you directly, quantifiably create an impact somewhere over the world, which I think goes beyond the tree planting, but rather makes people aware that they can make an impact. Beyond putting the plastic in your grey bag and putting the organic waste in the other small bag, there's some other things that you can do as a company and as a person to actually make an impact. So if you were to call out to the people of the world, not just in Malta, not just in the UK, but anywhere in the world, to make an impact with Treeapp and beyond, what would your one call to action be?
Get the app.
Get the app.
Get the app, start planting.
Nice. And I wanted to ask you about that. Do you have any plans for expansion? Because I'm sure that we'd love to be able to make an impact from Malta. Because I believe so far it's only available in the UK and Ireland, correct?
It is, and we're actually working hard to enable it in the rest of Europe very soon.
Nice. I would be your first user, I promise.
First one in Malta,
exactly.
promise?
Exactly, I promise. You have my word on that. Nice.
Second.
Second. Yeah, so two users done.
No, our goal is definitely to enable it in other countries, but we wanted to make sure that we have all of the operational side of things set up in the right way before doing that. And now that we're very much advanced on this, it's only a question about time.
Yeah. So we just hopped out of the meeting with the Treeapp founders and CEOs, and it was sensational. I think we spoke about all the things that we wanted to speak about. We got some insights I didn't even expect from them about how they scale the company, some of the lessons that they've learned along the way, some of the challenges that they faced, And it's amazing to see how they provide opportunities to startups like us and even massive companies and people, individuals, to actually make an impact around the world without lifting a finger. They've managed to tap into communities all over the world to actually make significant impact to the number of 5 million plus trees, which is insane. And they're also pleased to hear that we have a goal of 1 million trees ourselves by 2030. So we're looking forward to expanding our partnership with Treeapp and planting as many trees as humanly possible. And they also love the pots that we gave them. They absolutely love the pots we gave them, which I'm pleased about. So yeah, looking forward to A, decorating their offices with more happy pots, B, planting more trees to the tune of 1 million by 2030, 3, planting trees physically tomorrow, and 4, getting some noodles because I'm hungry. Which is better? Yeah. You wanna go? Let's go.